Session. Tonight we have Kelvin Davis. Kelvin Davis is a candidate running for mayor who resides in District 3. Moderating with us tonight, we have Calvin Bennett. Calvin Bennett is a resident of the City of South Fulton who resides in District 5. We just wanted to go over the ground rules. We ask that the candidate refrain from inappropriate speak about other candidates and just focus on your campaign and what you plan on doing for the residents of the City of South Fulton. We also ask that our guests in the audience tonight be respectful of the candidate, be respectful of the moderators, and be just so we can have a respectful, professional meeting for tonight. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to your moderator for the evening, Mr. Calvin Bennett. Mr. Bennett, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Rashad. First off, I'd like to just once again thank the South Fulton Coalition for hosting this event, and particularly Ron Booth and Rashad for the work that you guys are doing. And thank you. And I'm gonna get right into it tonight. You know, like you introduced me, I'm a resident of District 5, so we're gonna get right into it with the candidate, Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis, right off the bat, I'd just like for you to just introduce yourself to us. Take a couple of minutes just to tell us about who you are, where you come from, and how you wind up in South Fulton.
Well, I'm a Georgia native. I spent the first 18 years of my life in Georgia, and then I joined the U.S. Navy. And from there, I did 7 years active duty as a military intelligence specialist. And while I was active duty, I enrolled in Fort Valley State University, which is an HBCU in Middle Georgia, in which I finished my 4-year computer science degree and simultaneously started federal contracting with the Air Force and the Department of Defense. So I've had many different, I would say, walks of life that led me to here, but it's all been consistently the same and just building upon the experience that I started at 18 straight out of high school. So essentially what brought me to South Fulton is I was always in Fulton County, South Fulton County. So Union City, I was there for 5 years before moving to the city of South Fulton. And from there, that's where I kind of became very intrigued about everything that was going on in South Fulton, cityhood, incorporating away from Atlanta and creating, something new, something that already had the momentum going. So I wanted to be a part of something, that was strong and that was creating something new. But I've been here for about 4 years in District 3, with my son, with my daughter, with my mother. It's been home. It's going to be home for a very long time. I can't really consider another place home. So yes, I would say that what led me to running for mayor was, I've seen a lot of good things happen within this city and some things that just aren't favorable. And I know that I can provide, the type of leadership that the city needs, as well as the type of professionalism, that, the public needs, from leadership. Because right now, I think, we could definitely, improve in some areas. And, I have some really great ideas for that.
Okay, since you said we can improve in some specific areas, give us a couple of those specific areas.
I'll definitely say communications and marketing. I think the city can do a better job at communicating what the city is doing to the residents. I think the city can do a better job at educating the residents on what the developers' impacts are from their projects that they're requesting to bring to the city. I think, we could do a better job at just, ensuring that residents are educated about the work that the city does, as well as the residents have access to the services that the city provides. I think that city services are one of the biggest things that need improvement, but I know those questions are going to probably come later within the discussion. So I'll just table them for that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Give us the idea of some of the work that you've done, community service that you may have done over the years, the volunteer service or anything volunteering for political or recreational, just service in general.
Okay, well, I've always volunteered for my kids' sports leagues. I have to be honest, that's taken a considerable amount of my time, my kids' activities. But I have done, volunteer work, throughout Georgia, but not maybe necessarily a lot within the city of South Fulton. Um, but I'll say one of the biggest volunteer efforts I assisted with was Lebanon. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the crisis that occurred in Lebanon about 15 years ago. There was a war broke out with Lebanon and Jordan. And, we spent about 45 days over there just, feeding people, helping build huts slash housing, providing, clean water and medicine and all of that. So I'll say that's one of my biggest volunteer slash humanitarian efforts, but most of my volunteering has been for like school organizations and, recreational departments, for youth.
Okay. Give me two. I need two. Two of the motivating factors that made you get into this race, whether it be economic development, public safety. Give us two and go into it a little bit so we can get some insight.
Okay. Well, I'll say the first one that made me want to run was forward thinking. The ability to see further, you know, further into the future. And I'm not saying that, more so hypothetical, just, seeing the writings on the wall, paying attention to, the things that are happening around us, the things that are happening in Union City, the things that are happening in Fairburn, Hapeville, College Park, Atlanta, even, state level. I think that forward thinking, seeing West, I'll say the pros and the cons of, what's happening in our neighboring cities. I think those are some of the biggest indicators of, what we can do better and, how we can improve. So I think that this city has a lot of potential that leadership knows we have, but leadership just may not know how to tap into. I think that, you know, I would say that I would provide something unique within that aspect.
Okay, define the duties of the mayor as outlined in our charter. What are the
Well,
duties of the mayor?
Essentially, in short, the mayor, there's not much power that the mayor holds in terms of, policy. But, the city council is the one that, creates the policy and passes the policy. The mayor is the spokesperson of the policy. So from my review of the charter, I would say that the mayor is a strong supporter of the council. He makes, whatever the council passes, he makes it works. He, I would say promote it to other cities, other intergovernmental municipals. He promotes it throughout stakeholders and, try to bring the equity back to the city.
Mhm. Okay, I like that. Hey, give me two examples or point out two incidences where you feel the council is doing an excellent or a great job, where you just looked at them and said, "Why don't you guys do this every night or on every vote?" If you could find two, I don't know if you have to, but I'm just trying to see if there's a balance in your thinking when it comes to our
Okay.
council. Mm.
Um, let's see. I'll say that the council does a really good job at coordinating transportation projects throughout the districts.
Mm.
I think, since I've been here in the city of South Fulton, I think our roads have improved, our sidewalks have improved, our traffic has improved in many ways, but there's some trouble areas. But I'll say our city council has done, an adequate job, in ensuring that our infrastructure for transportation has improved. But I would say that, I'm more ambitious. I think we can do more, but I think they've done a good job.
Okay. Of course, that's one, or was that two?
That's two. I can't give you a second one. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's flip it. Give me two examples or incidences where you felt, and before, let me qualify. This is not about individuals or personalities. We're talking about our council as a body. Okay, so now give me two examples where you felt like now that was the third rail. That was, or some you totally just disagreed with.
Well, I'll say that our council talks to the media too much. I think that, it goes back into communication. I think we really need to have a strong communication plan within the city, that actually protects the brand of the city. I don't think we have that. I think the council, communicates too freely. I think we need to regulate communications in a way that promotes the city in a positive way. I think, a lot of the communications that our city leaders have had with the media. I think we should survey it and do a study on it, to see how we can improve moving forward. So I think communications is a sore spot to me. I feel as though communications is a sore spot.
Well, not glad you made that point, but since you made that point, do you feel it would be more beneficial for the city for a communications director to be the spokesman for our city, or the mayor himself to be the spokesman for our city, and why?
I think that we absolutely have to have a communications director. I think that any public statements that are made to the media or just made publicly, especially involving controversial topics, I think that we need a communications director. We need someone that is skilled, at communicating and protecting the brand of, large scale organizations such as the City of South Fulton. But I think that as a leader, you have to be able to speak. You have to be able to get in front of the camera and make public statements. But I just think there just needs to be more coordination amongst the council, the mayor, the city manager, the clerk, the attorney, and whoever coordinates communication. But I would say we absolutely need someone that manages and coordinates communications within the city, but we need to empower our mayor and our council to speak competently as well as professionally.
Okay, I got you. And Rashad or Ron, you guys, if there's anything in the chat, just come in anytime. Let me know. I can't see anything. But I do have a question for you. This has been coming up at all of the different candidate meetings that I've attended anyway. What do you think of public comments? Do you think we should have our 2 minutes to say whatever is on our mind, or do you like the way it's written? The rules are written right now.
Right now, I would say I don't like the way the rules are written right now because public comment was moved for the sake of, making the council meetings more efficient. And we have not accomplished that. So I would absolutely support changing the rules because the rules did not resolve the issue. So I think that public comments should be made in according to the agenda, so that you can speak directly on the agenda item. And those comments should be made at the same time that, the developer or whoever's requesting the project or rezoning request or whatever. But I think that, you know, public comments should not be at the end. It should be aligned with the agenda.
So you saying comments should be made, if you make a comment, it should be something related to something that's on the agenda.
At that
Hey,
moment,
Kelvin,
though. Yes.
before you, I just wanted to get in. Calvin, can you acknowledge Patricia after this comment is done?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
You
sorry. What
clarify
was the
that,
question?
Kelvin?
I kind of forgot the question because he said
Okay,
Calvin.
right now, before they brought this to a vote, the public normally could come and get their 2 minutes to say whatever's on their mind, whether it's a problem with their sewage or whether they have a problem with a neighbor, whatever. They had their 2 minutes to say what's on their mind. That was changed because you say because to make meetings more efficient. I think it's more of a personal thing. There was a lot of personal attacks coming from the public, and it was all really was centered around the mayor at the time. His support. And people were attacking. And then the rules were changed so that people could only speak to what's on the agenda. So now, if I have a problem that's not on the agenda, I don't have that right. So I'm just trying to figure out where you fall: open, free speech, or censored speech, as I call it.
Well, I definitely don't support censored speech at all. I think that, if we were to do, those kind of comments, I think that, they should be submitted before the council meeting, just like a general comment, just so, we can manage how many, comments are being made, throughout, one session, because, it could be, I
30
would
minutes.
say, overwhelming, so if we have 50 people, we can't really get 2 minutes per. So I think just registering beforehand, so that, occupancy can be established, in terms of who speaks, if, because the meetings only go for so long. So I would just say registering beforehand, you should be able to make a public comment on anything that you want.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it used to be. You come in, you give them idea what you're going to say, because if there's a lot of people saying the same thing, they may want to cut that down. And there's 30
Right.
minutes for public comments. Okay, we're going to go to Patricia Wise with a question.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hey, Ms.
Yeah.
Wise, how you doing?
I'm good. Okay, so Mr. Calvin, 3.22 of the city charter under management roles and responsibilities, item number 5 states that the mayor shall see that all laws and ordinances of the city are faithfully executed. And the second item is number 9, the mayor is requires the city manager to meet with him or her at a time and place designated for the consultation and advice upon the affairs of the city. With those two powers, how do you plan to be able to make the best of those two opportunities to see that the city meets to its meets their objectives successfully?
Well, I would say, for one, we would have to define the objectives. But with what you said, I would say that the objectives would be ensuring that the city um, operates ethically and legally, to not, expose the city, to lawsuits or to, additional oversights from, the state. So my approach to that, I know one of the big things right now is the forensic audit. And, we have, other ideas on, how we want to accomplish transparency within City Hall. I would say my vision for the city and ensuring that, my council and my staff, operates and works ethically would be to implement, I would say processes that disclose information that could potentially put us at risk periodically. So what I mean is that we wouldn't need to do a forensic audit because all of the information that would be audited would be available quarterly. So instead of needing, to pay, 2 or 3 consultants $100,000 each, we would just have someone in City Hall just print out a report, and we would be able to, ensure that everyone within City Hall is compliant, or I would say working within city policy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And, I was trying to mention, I know that your leaderships are clear and concise because I'm prior military as well. So we don't underestimate your ability to be able to lead, because as defined in the U.S. military code, a leadership is exactly what it is. It's the ability to lead. So thank you. Thank you for that answer.
All right, and we
Anyone?
have the next question coming from Ellen Miller Mapp. Ms. Mapp, you should be able to unmute your microphone. You have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for acknowledging me, and welcome. May I call you Mr. Davis?
Kelvin, Mr. Davis, I'm okay with either.
Okay, thank you. On the open public comments, there was an opportunity not too long ago when the discussion for the millage rate was pretty strong. And then there was a special forum held at Enon Baptist Church. Did you happen to be in the forum then?
Yes, I was there.
Okay, so that was an open opportunity for residents to present their concerns, make suggestions on their sensitivities about the millage rate and the way the city was about to get us in a situation of debt that may not have made sense, and it didn't make sense what the city was about to do at that time. And by hearing from so many citizens who were not limited to 2 minutes, who could freely speak about the subject at hand, it allowed the leadership to hear our concerns without the typical responses that we see from the council at council meetings. And fortunately for the citizens, those concerns that we were able to raise without limitation helped to convince the city how we actually felt about that issue. And it would be nice to have more such forums where the council can be made aware, and yourself, the mayor, if you are elected, be made aware of issues that may be a neighborhood issue that it is difficult for the residents of a particular neighborhood to take care of, because there may not have been time enough allotted to them in a regular council meeting because it wasn't on the agenda. And the council person representing them didn't come around that week or didn't have a forum that week when the issue was at hand. So the counselor may not have known about a particular issue that was becoming a greater concern for that particular neighborhood. In other words, the counselor can't make it to every corner of their district to hear from residents when a particular issue comes up strictly for that neighborhood or for the district. So having an opportunity to come and voice your concerns in an open forum, if in fact it could not be managed during a regular council meeting, for an open forum is your opinion on that kind of special forum held aside from a regular council meeting when it could not be handled during a council meeting?
I love that question. And I fully understand what you're saying. I would say that I really like that they, I would say, organize that event, for the public to come out, well, for the residents to come out and speak, about the millage rate. I was there. It was a very emotional meeting. Many residents spoke up and spoke out. And I think that, well, I'm sure, and I know that the council heard us loud and clear. I also completed a comment card that night, but it was so many people that, were, you know, wanting to speak, I wasn't able to get to as well as others. But I'll say that my plan for that would be any significant change or project within the city of South Fulton would be, I would create a poll, and what would happen is it'll be disseminated to the residents, in which, we would, ask if the residents would like, I would say, a special called meeting, to discuss this project. I think any project that significantly changes the landscape of South Fulton should be categorized as, a project that the residents can call a special called meeting. And I think we need to implement procedures within City Hall where residents can actually call for special meetings. And I think that we need to implement criteria in which those meetings would have to adhere to, such as, this mega warehouse that, they're trying to rezone within District 7. That's clearly, going to significantly change District 7. I think that the residents should have a procedure or a process to be able to ask, the City Hall, the leaders, to create a special call meeting so that residents can discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
I like
Back to you.
that.
Back to you, Calvin.
Okay. I like that. And in keeping with what the point that Ellen brought out, is we need to keep in mind as residents, we can always call our own community meetings and invite our council leaders and our mayors to those meetings to express our feelings also. We definitely don't need permission to have our own community meetings, to have our voices heard. But let me ask you about the council, since we're talking about that. What experience do you have, or how would you approach the situation of the interaction between our council members? How would you approach that without names or without, negativity? We see an issue, we all see it. The council would tell us we don't believe what we see, but the news would tell us something different. There's some dissension going on a regular basis. How do you deal with something like that, stepping in there as a mayor?
Well, I would say that I've dealt with, many personalities throughout my career, especially in the military and the Navy. And now, as federal contracting, I sit in some pretty powerful rooms, and those people are not the most humble. And I would say, there's quite a few people that I work with that may have, I would say, more I would say more issues to deal with to be able to get along with in terms to making things move forward or making things work. I'll say that it's never been a problem in the workplace, because as a veteran, as a, prior serviceman, we've always dealt with diversity. We've always dealt with many personalities. We've always, it's been a melting pot. So I've always been able to get along with everyone, within the workplace. Even though we were not friends, outside of the workplace, because I understand that, you know, the workplace is a professional environment and, you know, we're there to get things done, you know. So when, you know, I walk into City Hall, I know that, you know, there's a mission and there's objectives and they need to be accomplished. So in regards to getting along with the city hall, I think that is naturally going to happen. I'm 38 years old. I have a strong reputation in getting along with people. I've had conversations with essentially everyone on the council, and it's been really pleasant. I'll say that I think that maybe the current council would need some additional support in getting it right, but I think that with the upcoming election, I think that there's going to be enough of a leadership change. And I'm not saying that there's going to be a full leadership change, you know, because no one knows the results. But I think that this next election, the voters are going to put the right people, you know, into those seats that are going to be able to, you know, get it right. So I have to just, you know, be truthful and say that I wouldn't have any issues getting along with anyone on the current council, District 1 through 7. And not calling any names, I get along with every single council member. And I've had some tough conversations with a couple of them as well, but those conversations, you know, they came from, I would say, a reasonable place. Like I'm not going to challenge anything anyone is doing unless it's necessary. So I think, you know, I've had some tough conversations already with the council, but you know, myself and the council, we've been able to move past it and, you know, respect each other.
Hey,
Yeah,
hey,
go
Calvin,
ahead.
there's a question from the audience.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna unmute Patricia. You have the floor. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi. Another question for you, Calvin. And you know what? I just forgot my question. I am so sorry. Oh, yes. Because
That's
you have the
Kelvin.
ability, sorry?
His name is Kelvin, and I'm Calvin.
Yeah, it's confusing
I'll
me
just say
too. It's
Mr. Davis.
confusing me too.
I'll do
Yes.
Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, since you have the ability to be able to communicate with the city manager in regards to issues in regards to the city, will you be interested and would you consider meeting with the city manager in regards to P card spending and travel?
Absolutely. I think P card spending, P card management, P card compliance. And I think the P card issue is more so a compliance issue. I think that everyone that's issued a P card needs to, you know, truly understand, you know, the policy behind spending and reimbursements and what's authorized and what's not authorized. So, and in terms of travel, I think that the same. I think it's all about policy. I don't think any travel should be authorized unless it's bringing back value or equity to the city. So I think that would be one of the most important meetings within my first 100 days, because if I'm to be mayor and the spokesperson for the city and the spokesperson for the policy that the city passes, I think that, you know, P cards and travel policy will have to be effective, because it's going to take more than just myself, you know, to get the job done.
Okay, all right. Cool beans. Cool beans.
You got a follow-up, Pat?
I'll raise my hand again, let someone else. I got to formulate my question.
All right,
Uh,
Calvin. Mr. Bennett, I have a question for Mr. Davis.
okay.
All right, so Mr. Davis, thinking thinking about your own P card that you may have through your employer, are there some best practices that you see at your employer that could benefit the city? And then if there are any, how would you work with the city manager to implement those?
Absolutely. I've looked at the policy and I've noticed some discrepancies within the policy. Within most organizations or companies that I've supported, I've always had uh, a travel card, a government travel card. I guess that would be the equivalent of a P card. And that's just required for the job because, the job can take you to other places. So in order, to have a confident spending policy for the P card, I think that there needs to be a policy on, requesting, bigger purchases. I know that there's a policy for like, okay, if there's a $5,000 purchase, it needs to be routed through the city manager. But I think that maybe needs to be codified. And because dollars don't necessarily mean compliance, because it can be, you know, $10,000, but it doesn't mean that, it's a purchase that's authorized. So my solution to that would be to codify the P cards so that it's essentially like you would think like if you've had an HSA card, a health savings account, or a flexible spending account, if you swipe it at CVS, you can swipe it for most things, but certain things you just can't swipe it for. I think the P card should be codified to where it works the same way. Also, I think that traveling in terms of getting approvals, I think that there needs to be an official request that's initiated by, if I'm traveling, I would request, to the city manager to take this trip. And if I'm taking this trip, I would also create the itinerary before any dollars are spent. So I would know how much my plane costs. I would know how much my rental car costs. I would know how much my food and meals, my gas, all of that. So that way, once the city manager, approves my trip, we would already know how much I'm going to spend, at least or around how much I'm going to spend. So that way things are better managed. And then once I return from the trip, I should submit a trip report. So after every trip, I should submit a trip report that basically states what I did on the trip and what I accomplished and how it helps the city. And if those things are not done, I don't think the travel should be authorized.
All right, thank
I
you for
agree.
that.
I agree
Thank you.
100% with your answer, man. I just feel like requisitions should be put in anyway for travel. It's not like these people got, where they're traveling every day to go do jobs. I don't get it, but I like your answer on that one. You had another one, Rashad?
Yeah, we actually got three people
Let it
from the
go.
audience. So I'm going to unmute Miss Harvey. Miss Harvey, you should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Kelvin, I agree with your last statement. Also, I've also stated in other meetings that there should be a three-tiered system. It needs to be established to authorize big charges. So one person wouldn't have all the power to do that. That's how you can control that situation with the spending of the P cards and for whatever reason. A three-tiered, if not four-tiered system of authorizations. Also, I wanted to ask Mr. iPhone 5 Earl McCarthy's question on the chat. What do you see as the top three priorities for the city of South Fulton over the next 4 years?
I would say transforming public services. That's number one. Number two, I would say transforming senior services. I think that we have to think of public services and we also have to think of senior services, which is an extension of public services. But I think that, seniors just need, a little more touch. So I would say public services and senior services. And three, I would say infrastructure. I think we need to smartly plan our infrastructure because most cities outside of Atlanta has already overdeveloped, and we have a lot of undeveloped land, and there's a lot of developers salivating over our city. So it really concerns me when I hear leaders say no one wants to come to our city, and I just simply don't agree with that. If that was true, our population would not be rising every year. And developers would not be coming here asking for rezoning requests because, the project within District 7, that is a huge project. So to say people don't want to come here, I understand it's a warehouse. We don't want a warehouse. And, we need leaders that could attract, better businesses, but, that's a more complex resolution. That's going to require syncing up with the Urban Development Authority as well as the South Fulton Development Authority. It's not just something the mayor can do. It's not just something the council can do. It's just going to take a really collaborative effort, between, the departments and the authorities that we've created, to get these things done.
Well, now, when you say senior services, exactly what do you mean?
Well, senior services and aging services. So essentially, when people are, transitioning into um senior citizenship and needing access to more resources that they've worked for all of their lives, such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and helping them establish transportation to and from their appointments and all of that, navigating the paperwork, navigating technology. I think technology is a huge thing that's plaguing the senior community. And also, one thing that I've kept from my campaign, because my campaign has, I'll say, inspired some others, and I noticed some similarities. But I want to establish a senior fraud protection office, and what that would be it's an office that would support seniors in identifying fraud. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but seniors are the hardest hit in terms of scammers. Scammers, they're not scamming the younger people because we know what scams look like, but they're hitting our seniors really hard. I'm my mom's caregiver, and the amount of scams that come to her phone, come to her email, and all of that, it's frightening. I can only be thankful that I help her out with that. But I think that, just supporting seniors more is a huge thing, a huge win for this city. And we need to protect our seniors because scammers are targeting seniors. That's what they're doing.
Well, of course they are because they're easy prey. But
Right.
the situation is, I found some seniors, they don't want to listen to what you have to say about it, and they're apathetic. They don't want to listen to you because they have a friend on the other side, which is the scammer. So, if it's some responsibility on their part, because see, that's a heavy burden, especially trying to protect seniors from scammers. Okay, that
Well, they
that
do it
that
digitally. They do it digitally. So, like, what I do for a living, like, I've done a lot of projects where we do target scammers, where we do target criminals online. So, I know of ways in which we can protect seniors in a way that wouldn't be heavy lifting.
okay. Thank you very much.
All right, and our next question comes from iPhone Cody. You have the floor. Please unmute yourself. iPhone Cody, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Yes, I can hear you. Hey, good evening. Hey, I have a question. I know that the city manager's contract is coming up to end, I think in either March or either May. If elected, would you allow the residents to, help you decide on whether, we should renew the city manager's contract, or would it just be, automatically renewed? Because I know prior, the current mayor, he was like, he stated that, he would allow the residents and employees to like help, choose the city manager. So I'm just want to know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I'll say that I'm not intelligent on the legal aspect of that. So I think what the mayor said, it sounds good, but I'm not sure how legal that is. But I will say that um, I would want, the public to support the city manager as well as a new city manager. So with that, I would say the process of appointing a new city manager would be very transparent and visible, to the public. They would be able to see, everyone who's being considered for a city manager. They would be able to see their resumes. They would be able to see their accomplishments, their credentials, so that they can know that it was a fair process in selecting the city manager. I think that, as mayor, and any potential new council, I think that, we should, have the opportunity to consider a change, but I can't say that a change is needed.
All right. Now we'll move over to the next question, which is from Ms. Danielle Kennedy. You should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Thank you. So transparently, I was about 20 minutes late to the meeting. So if this has been addressed, just let me know and I will watch the recording. Um, so I saw you at another forum. And for me, it's important to have somebody in office with experience because we're such a young city. And so I feel like you have great experience. I feel like you don't, look at things through rose-colored glasses. So you're very realistic about, what it is that you can and can't do. So one thing that I would like you to clarify, because this is where you kind of lost me, because for me, as a, mom, wife, 3 young kids, I really do, think that economic development and having amenities in this area is important. And one of your comments, it sounded like that wasn't as top of a priority for you, or maybe you were saying like that's not your like that we have other departments for that. But could you clarify kind of your thoughts on economic development, kind of bringing in um, diverse businesses, fresh businesses, that we can actually utilize to spend our money there, and then the city could get tax dollars off of that versus us driving to Douglasville or Noonan or Peachtree City to go to, some nicer establishments or take our kids out for the weekend or something of that nature.
Okay. Well, definitely thank you for asking that question so I can clarify it, because economic development, is huge on my priorities, but it's more so me accepting that that's not within my power. And so that's the only reason why I answered it that way. But it's not something that I'm going to ignore. So with that, that's why I stated, I would work very closely with the Urban Development Authority and the South Fulton Development Authority to sync efforts, to sync visions, and to promote, economic development, because it's not within the power of the mayor to do so. So I wouldn't want to lie to you. I'm never going to lie to you, to be honest. So even if it doesn't make me look good, you're still going to get the truth. But it's simply not within the charter for the mayor to do so. But I know how to work, cross-functionally. And within City Hall, I think that's where we need to improve. We need to be able to work cross-functionally. We don't need, a siloed, um, City Hall. We don't need just the council and the mayor, the attorney, the clerk, and the manager just working away, just doing their own thing. I think, we have to collaborate with the other authorities that we've created, such as the South Fulton Development Authority, because, they're the development authority, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority. So we have to use what we've created. We've created all of the departments that we need to bring about the proper economic development within this city, but we just have not accomplished that. So it's more so we have to look at the resources that we have within our city hall and ensure that we're using them appropriately or using them correctly, because we have a large city hall. We have many employees. I think, we probably have, probably, I would say, one of the largest staff city halls in Georgia, at least top 5 or top 10. So we have the resources, to get all of this done. And it's more so about seeing the resources we have and ensuring that they're in the right place, because we just experienced, I would say, too many inefficiencies within our services, to have such a huge budget for staff. So with that, I would just say economic development is my top priority, but I would just have to approach it in a way that respects the charter.
Can I slip in a question, since you mentioned authority and you mentioned economic development, the same? What are your thoughts on authorities? I'm a big fan of our city having a senior citizen housing authority, public housing authority, and I'm a big fan of us buying up as much land as we can, even though the city manager said we don't need to be spending money. But I'm looking at this, and this is some of the talk going around in our communities. We know Atlanta can't go nowhere but south of Atlanta. All the development has to come this way. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that somewhere along the line there's a bottleneck where developers aren't able to develop on this part of town for whatever reason. I think it's political. I think it's coming from higher up. But my thought is, if we had our own authority, like we did with Councilman Baker when he had the South Fulton Authority, I think they dismantled the authority that he was on, if I'm not mistaken. But they were starting to do some real good work. And it was about why we voted to become a city. Just give me your thoughts on authorities, and do you think we need them? Will we benefit from them? Why shouldn't we have them? Just give me your thoughts to clear up my thinking.
Well, I have a love-hate for authorities. I love authorities because they help hold leaders accountable. But I'll say I hate authorities because authorities means that leaders aren't doing their jobs. So if we're creating, housing authorities, that's because we're having too many housing issues. If we're creating senior authorities, that's because our seniors are not getting served. So we're creating all of these different authorities because we're not doing our job. So I'll say I have a love-hate relationship with authorities. I think they're necessary, but I hate having to create them because it usually means something isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't have senior housing in our city. I mean, we got a couple of private entities, but I'm talking about if I was to go down today, I'm a senior citizen and couldn't afford, to stay in this house. Right off the rip, I don't know what my life would be like. I would have to obviously depend on Fulton County or my family, which both of those situations are scary. But those are some of the thoughts that I think about, man. I look at College Park; they have their own housing authority. College Park don't have 20,000 people in that city. They have public housing. They don't have a 20. I believe it's just one of the ways that you can at least guarantee that a segment of your population, you have control over their environmental, well-being. But that's just my thoughts,
100%. And you have to have a housing authority though. Like I think that's a bare minimum of any city. I think, a lot of other authorities, they're just, indicators of failures.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, Rashad. I just jumped in there. He was talking about authorities. I just wanted to get that in.
Oh, no
You
problem.
have
I thought
another
it was
question?
appropriate. All right. So the next question is from Patricia. You should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor. Miss Patricia, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Is okay. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry. The South Fulton Charter Commission is a group established to review recommendations, changes to the city South Fulton's charter. Currently, the mayor's nominee is vacant. Who do you plan, or what characteristic of a person would you like to nominate for that position? Because we do believe that it should be filled.
Are these filled by residents or like employees?
Yeah, they can be filled by residents. They could be filled, whoever you want to nominate.
Well, I think that it would have to be a resident. It would be someone that is involved within the community and knows the charter for one. I think you have to know the charter, to be on the charter commission. That's just, a requirement. But I'll say someone I would say, I have to say forward thinking, for the simple fact that we have to understand that just because another city is doing something, that doesn't mean we're supposed to do it too. Just as, Atlanta is a strong mayor charter, and we're, a strong city manager, city council. I don't think that we have to look at Atlanta and be like, okay, that's what we have to do, because I think, South Fulton is unique and we have our own strengths, to build upon. So I think that, someone that's just fair to the process, someone that, can look at, stuff, outside of their own shoes. I think, those are just the qualitative attributes that I would look for in someone to hold that seat.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Can I ask another question, or is there somebody in the queue?
I'm cool.
You mentioned earlier about committees and things like that, that you're not too, they're good things, but then they're not, bad things. And just, let's just say, unnecessary extra stuff. Like the city manager has, I believe, 2 assistants. The attorney has, I believe, an assistant. And now we have a parliamentarian that sits in the meeting at $2K per meeting. I need a job, guys. $2K, $2,000 per meeting to do exactly what the city attorney can do. When, if and when you were elected, this gross misuse of taxpayer dollars, I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, the city attorney's right there. So explain, just a little bit further. This is a great example of why we need clear focus, a point to we can get to in terms of this. Okay, well, if the city attorney doesn't want to do it or protect her interests while she's there, so let's get somebody else to do it. You know what I mean? And what are your thoughts?
It really just goes back into we keep adding, these new authorities, these new agencies, these new positions based on failure.
Oh,
Based on, I would say, I would just keep it at failure. We're paying for failure. That's essentially what we're doing, because any authority that we stand up still costs money. it still costs money. And then if we stand up an additional authority, we're exposing the city to additional lawsuits, to additional risks, because now we have additional representation for the city. So
Mhm.
that's why I say I have a love-hate relationship, because I love them because they hold people accountable, but they usually mean there's failure. And I'm not a fan of how the city has just thrown money at failure and then has claimed to have done a good job. So yeah, I would say that's my position on it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping to get in terms of an answer. Because when you talk about failure, that's exactly how it's addressed. Something in the milk ain't clean. We don't want to clean it, so we're gonna put something in it to kind of divert the dirtiness of it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah, great.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Thank you.
All
I
right.
just have to make one correction. My authorities are independent, bro. Housing authorities, they're independent. That's the whole one of the purposes of setting up an authority. They're separate. Even though the city council or the mayor, they will elect people to sit on the board of the authority, but the authority is independent of itself. I'm sorry, Rashad.
All right, Mr. Davis, I did have another question for you. Um, what has your experience been with the open records process for the city of South Fulton? Have you did the open records request? And if so, can you describe what that experience has been like for you receiving those records?
I've done actually at this point I've done quite a few open records requests with the city of South Fulton. My first open records request was responded to within a week. It was an open records request about parks, and I was responded to with a $1,300 invoice. Um, so needless to say, I didn't continue requesting, the record. But after that, I'll say I submitted at least four more open records requests. My last one was submitted in August. I want to say around August 20th. And out of the additional four open records requests, I have not received a single one. So I would say that it's been a very unpleasant experience. The policy in which the city clerk responded to it wasn't adhered to, and it's just a process that's broken. I'm not sure if it's intentionally broken or it's just broken. But open records requests within the city of South Fulton, I think it's a broken system, and I don't know why. I don't know the root cause of it, but I think that there's something terribly wrong with open records.
All right, do you have any thoughts for how you would, do you have any thoughts for improving that process?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think the process I think the process is good. I really think that the process is good. I just think that they're not providing the records. So I think that there would probably need to be a biweekly sync up meeting between the city clerk, the city attorney, the city manager, at least, in managing and handling, I would say open records requests that are outside of the policy window. So the policy is, we're supposed to be responded to, I want to say 3 days, correct me if I'm wrong. And after 3 days were to pass, I think that those open records should be um, moved to, I would say, a report that says that, these are out of compliant open records. So the city manager, the city clerk, and the city attorney would use their assistants that we pay nicely, to resolve these items. And I just think that um the the managers of open records, they need to sync up more. They need to meet more and resolve open records requests with priority. I don't think that open records requests are being approached with any type of priority, and that's how I would, go about it, by creating, a biweekly sync up or a weekly sync up meeting where the city clerk, the city manager, and the city attorney, basically go over all of the open records requests that are out of compliance.
Thank you for that. Now we have a question from iPhone Cody. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, I just want to say, if you did become mayor, you definitely would want to check out that open records process. I'm a former employee. I worked in finance, and a lot of times, what he was saying, they would give a exaggerated cost to. I mean, this is what I think. I would think, they would give exaggerated costs to, the open records files because, for instance, the finance files, they was in the boxes in his closet. And I know I used to hate to go in that closet. We didn't know it was in that closet. So I think, that would be something you would really need to look into because, like I said, is they don't know what's in there. So
Right.
that was
And also I would, I would lead a really strong effort to digitize everything in City Hall. Because if everything is digital, it's easier to get and provide to people.
right. And somebody
Like
asked, why
there's
would we be charged? Because it would take so much time for us to try to look for it. We didn't know what was in there. So,
Right.
sometimes the cost would be exaggerated, to keep you from wanting to ask for the open record.
Right. And that makes sense. And that's why like I would ask that the council approve a policy to digitize all records. Any records that are not digital should be digitized. That way, if an open records request involves those records, they can be quickly provided.
Thank you for that. Now, we have some questions in the chat. 1 second, let me get to it. I'm gonna turn it back to you, Calvin, while I locate these questions.
Let's stay with city operations. There's been a lot of turnover in with our city employees. Some have even described it as a toxic work environment. And I don't know how true none of this stuff is. I just know we've been hearing it over a few months. And I don't have any concerns about your intelligence and your leadership. I see you have all of those skills, and especially with your military background and your professional background. My concerns about our city is the personnel interaction between individuals. There just seem to be something that's just so off. How would you approach trying to set a new tone, to city government or management, starting with the city manager on down? I'm not talking about the council. I'm talking about daily operations of the city. What would you do to try to straighten that ship, to address some of the rumors about working for our city?
Well, I'll say that I think that a lot of those rumors and bad press comes from conduct. Like, the conduct of employees, the conduct of, you know, maybe elected leaders, you know, supervising those employees or maybe just asking them to do things. I would say that the city needs a strong training program that provides training for conduct. But like every job that I've worked for, one of the first onboarding trainings that I've taken was code of conduct. So any organization that I've worked for, I have to take an entire training that establishes the code of conduct in which I'm to adhere to in the workplace. And these are annual trainings. So everyone company wide would do this training. And then there's also training on, sexual assault, because we know that sexual assault and sexual harassment does take place within the workplace. And there's also trainings on whistleblowing. If you have leadership or a superior, that's acting unethically, or, putting you in weird situations that you shouldn't be in, the employees should be trained and aware on how to report those issues safely, without retaliation. So I think that establishing, a strong culture and training culture within the city, that promotes proper conduct, proper professionalism, and communication throughout the different departments I would say, strengthen retention rates among the employees for the city.
Okay, and what would your feedback be to the city manager as it relates to dealing with the police chief and what's going on with our police department?
Well, I think in terms of the police chief, I think the allegations are pretty concerning. So I don't think an operational review goes far enough, into ensuring that we're finding what's wrong within our city, police department, as well as, we're fixing it. We're resolving the issue. I don't think the allegations are operational, So I think that, it needs to be expanded upon. The investigation needs to be expanded upon so that our chief can come back to work and do his job, or we could seek other options.
Well, you good, Kevin. I'm gonna have to give it to you. You're good. I'm gonna go into the area that you probably this is your strong point here. Data centers. Tell us your thoughts about how you feel about where we are with data centers today, how the vote went down on the council, and where you think we should go, what we should do about it moving forward, if we could do anything about it.
Well, I don't think we could do anything about the ones they've already approved.
Right.
But as I stated within my first 100 days policy on my website, I don't think we should approve another data center within the city of South Fulton until we assess all of the warehouse space that we have within the city of South Fulton. I think that we have a lot of empty warehouses, meaning there's no tenants in them. There's not much different between a warehouse and a data center.
Mm.
There's not much difference. The only difference is, the data center isn't going to have trucks,
Mm-hmm.
driving in all the time. The data center probably isn't going to have cars because it doesn't really need people. And that's what I really want people to understand, that, these data centers are more than just buildings with servers. These data centers are disrupting America. Like America, these data centers are disrupting jobs. They're disrupting the workforce. So bringing data centers into the city and doing so aggressively, I think that we're exposing the city to a lot of risks, especially in the current climate that we're in. I also want people to understand that data centers are also military targets. That's infrastructure. So if we were to enter some type of crisis or conflict or whatever, the places with the most data centers are going to be the biggest targets. And that scares me, being a resident of the city of South Fulton. I've commissioned 3 data centers myself with the U.S. Air Force. I'll build I would help build any data center that my job helps to pay me, but I would never support a data center coming to the city of South Fulton.
Mm. Okay. You got anything, Rashad?
Yes, I do. There's a question from the chat that says, how would you ensure that the South Fulton Police Department supports community policing efforts and builds trust with residents?
I love that you asked that question. I actually have an open records request with the city in regards to that because I'm sure most of us are aware now that we're building a new police precinct and a fire training station. Um, so police presence and community engagement are a huge um, those can be really good wins for the city and for our police department. So I think that you know if we were to go move forward with this $113 million project, I think we have to look at keeping the current police precincts that we have open because right now we have four police precincts. I want people to be fully aware that we have four police precincts distributed throughout the city of South Fulton. And if we were to move forward with the project as is, we would be moving down to one police precinct. So I don't think that would help um, community engagement. I think that we should keep the four precincts open that we have. I think that we should have a police precinct within every district. And I think, those district precincts would, you know, have, weekly, monthly events or whatever, community engagement events, so that they can really get to know the people within their district. I think that, police should be assigned you know, to districts and they should work the beats within their districts so that, they know the community members. So if a police see, a kid, at Dollar General, acting out, he can more so be like, hey, calm down before I tell your mom or whatever, get it together, so, I think, if we create, you know, our policing and safety infrastructure in alignment with our actual infrastructure, I think we can accomplish that. I think police presence needs to be, established within each district. We have 7 districts. The city of South Fulton, I'm not sure if, people are aware, we are the third largest land area city within Georgia. We are the third largest land area city in Georgia, which means that that is a lot of area for our police to respond to. So I don't think that having one police station and having all of our officers within that one area is going to promote community engagement. So I think that we need to smartly plan, um, how we expand, our safety infrastructure.
All right, thank you. There's another question from the chat. Can you share an example of a project you were responsible for where you were not satisfied with the results? What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I'll say I was working a project for Delta. It was a cloud transformation project in which we were moving their data centers from Virginia Avenue to the cloud, but we had to work with a lot of different teams within Delta. Some were direct Delta employees, some were contractors. Um, I think that it was a really good project effort that started off really well, but I think that the project got derailed because, we just had the wrong people leading, to be honest. But it was a position where I wasn't in charge, and every position I've had, I have not been in charge, but I've been in charge enough, But this was a position where I just had to, you know, act within my role because that's one thing I'm always going to do. I'm going to act within the role, just like as mayor, I'm going to act within the charter. If the charter says I can do this, that's what I'm going to do. If it says I can't, I'm not going to do it. So with this, I'll say this project really was just derailed because of just bad leadership, poor leadership, and it was out of my control. But I did the best that I could to make it a successful effort.
All right, thank you. Now, the next question from the chat, and then we'll get to you, Ms. Harvey. A recent letter from the city manager indicates that funds for the project is on hold and that funding is being sought elsewhere. This is another transparency failure. What are your thoughts on this?
Which
I
project?
think that is being rushed. I think that if the initial, I think that we've had too many inconsistencies with this financing deal, to the point where, we had this special call meeting at Enon Church, in which the public showed up and showed out, so we've been experiencing, inconsistencies and I'll say shortcomings with this financing deal since August. We're almost in November, and I think that this council is the council, the mayor, the attorney. Well, I guess it's a concerted effort, but I just, it worries me how aggressively they are pushing this to be so close to election day. And I think that a capital project of this scale, spending $113 million before 4 seats may potentially flip, I think to me, I think it's almost criminal. But I can't say that because it's a public safety project. So you have to be sensitive around that. But I just don't think this council, this mayor, this attorney, this city clerk, these leaders should not spend $113 million 2 weeks before election day.
All right, Ms. Harvey, you should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor. Ms. Harvey?
Oh, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Um, I just want to make a comment about the data centers. Mr. Davis, a parcel over here on Mason Road was rezoned to light industrial, so a data center can be built. Now, that area is on the edge of the City of South Fulton and Union City, and that property is privately owned. The owner said that if the City of South Fulton didn't pass the zoning, they're going to re-annex their property over to Union City. Hence, the city will lose a lot of revenue. And that's the reason why that is. The point that I'm trying to make is a lot of this land out here, the City of South Fulton doesn't own, especially when we became a city 7, 8 years ago. But you will never see this in Chattahoochee Hills, where the city owns 70% of the land. So if it's private ownership, that will be problematic. So we don't want data centers, but there are ways to get data centers in through zoning, and a lot of this land is privately owned and has been for the last 30 years.
Well, I'll say that as mayor, I don't think that I would support a property owner coercing the city into a rezoning approval based on their own desires, because that's what I see it as. It's not a project that brings value or equity to the city. So if the property owner thinks that they can re-annex themselves to Union City, I would encourage them to give it a try.
Oh, no, it's
But
already been passed by the city of South Fulton, the rezoning.
right,
So
but I'm just
they,
saying, like, if a property owner threatened my council or myself with annexing, or I approve or we approve a rezoning request, you know, I would just have to call their bluff, because there's no way, you know, we should be forcing those type of decisions based on, just what a property owner wants. It has to align with, you know, the comprehensive plan. It has to align with the vision for the city. One property owner doesn't, change that.
oh, well, it was rezoned to light industrial.
Right.
So,
Just hypothetically
and that,
speaking, it
that, that
was.
was within the comprehensive plan.
Right.
So, it's gonna be built. So what I'm
Oh, yes,
saying,
yes.
yeah, we can he and haw about data centers and warehouses and that sort of thing. But if we don't have control of the land or whatever the case may be, it's something else that's gonna happen, and it has. Uh, and I do agree with you about data centers being a hit for the military. Uh, I had at the meeting, I kind of asked that question um, when Councilwoman Willis gave her talk about that at her meeting. I was afraid of that, but of course, you had your experts in there and that sort of thing. That could happen. So what? But then the question is, what are we going to do about it after it happens? Okay, thank you. I'm finished.
All right, thank you for that. Now, the next question comes from Brandon Eads. Please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Kelvin. How are you?
I'm well in yourself.
Doing pretty well, pretty well. I first want to say thank you for, taking the time out to speak with us today. These meetings have been very instrumental in helping people to decide, who they want to be the next mayor. And thank you for also putting your name in the race. I do believe that more of our age group needs to get out and be more politically engaged in what's going on in our community. But just hypothetically, let's just say you don't win this mayorship. Would you consider taking on another role such as council?
Um, I've been asked that question many times. I don't think I would consider being council, simply because I have a citywide vision. Um, I would probably honestly consider being an employee before council, because I would want to help the city as a whole versus a silo or a segment of the city. So if I'm not elected, I know a lot of candidates won't say that, but I'm okay with saying that because everything is God's plan. I still, will support the city of South Fulton, and my mission will still be the city of South Fulton.
Got it. And thank you for that. Um, just my opinion, and I think a lot of people have had this similar opinion of the mayor. I just feel like the council individually has more power and influence within the city than the mayor. Just off of experience, I think, they have a lot of influence in what happens in the city, and, the mayor just doesn't have that same capability. I do see the both sides of it. I think the mayor has the influence, like you mentioned, on citywide initiatives and stuff like that, and being the face of what the council is wanting. But as far as implementing real change, I think that definitely comes from the city council. But again, thank you for your questions. Your answers for those questions.
All right.
And I'll also add, the reason, well, an additional reason is, like, I'm not running for mayor for power. I was well aware of the charter before I ran. The reason I want to run for mayor is because I really want to help people, and I'm really good at it. Like, I'm really good at helping people. I have good ideas. I have good solutions. I get things done. I keep my word, So I wouldn't need power. I wouldn't need the power that the council has to help the city of South Fulton.
All right. There's a question from the chat, and then we will get to you, Ms. Perry. That question is, how will you address issues related to rental properties and private equity investments that are impacting home values? That's the first part of the question, so I'm gonna let you answer that.
Okay. Well, in terms of rental properties and you said private investors,
Yes.
well, I think that's a very sensitive um problem. And I will describe it as a problem because, we have an issue where we have Fortune 500 companies, we have mega investors, buying up land and building subdivisions and making them all lease or rental townhomes or whatever. And that's, destabilize, the housing market. It's done so for the last, 4 or 5 years since the pandemic. Everyone saw, the surge of development that took place during the pandemic. And, right now, a significant amount of them are private investor owned. I think that in the city of South Fulton, you know, we need to collect the data. Atlanta collects the data. So like Atlanta is leading the nation in investor-owned single-family homes. Over 19% of Atlanta's single homes are owned by investors. And I would be confident in saying that South Fulton is close behind, but I just don't think we collect the data and or at least expose the data. So I think that, as I think that we have to start, collecting the data to see how many, you know, permits we're approving, for regular residents, regular citizens of the city of South Fulton, and how many we're approving for private investors, and I think that we need to place a quota on how many permits we approve for single family homes or condominiums, for private investors. And I think that quota needs to be an annual quota, and it needs to be adjusted every year based on the results of the previous year. So I think that, we have to start, thinking forward, and we have to start collecting the data that we need, to be able to make the right decisions to protect, our housing, for our residents, because we want, the city of South Fulton to be affordable, but not cheap, So we want the residents to be able to afford to live here. And we want property values, to continue to rise. So I think that, that starts with just being smart.
All right, thank you for that. Now, we have a question from Ms. Condia Perry. Please unmute yourself. You have the floor. And while we wait for Ms. Perry to unmute herself, Mr. Davis, are you okay to go over a little bit, maybe 20
Yes.
minutes? All right, thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Perry, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I had the hardest time unmuting myself. So, Kelvin, thank you. Like many have said, thank you for taking the time out to speak with us this evening. And again, I'll tell everybody, this South Fulton Coalition has been an eye opener for me, and it's really helped me. It's really stopped me really from doing my early voting because I've it's helped me to see some of the candidates in a different light. So, saying that, I was on one of these and there were questions being asked. And so I was talking to someone who's not the campaign manager, but pretty close to the campaign manager. And one of the things they told me offline was, judging by some of the questions, and I'm saying tonight, some people are disillusioned as to what the mayor can and cannot do. So with that in mind, can you realistically set an expectation, or can you set a realistic expectation as far as what we can, if you're elected mayor, what we can expect for you to do, and what you really just like, you don't expect me to do this or that, or, if that makes any sense at all.
Right.
And I don't know if it's even fair to even ask that question, but I had to ask.
It's a fair question. Every question is fair. That's what I truly believe. I agree with everything that, you said. I think that's why I built my campaign the way that I built it. I'm not sure, if you've researched it any, but my entire campaign is built within the current charter. So everything that is on my website, everything I've said at the forums, everything I've said tonight, everything I promise is built within the charter because I operate within the rules. I follow rules because I work for the federal government, and if you don't follow the rules, they'll be escorting you out the building. So I'll say that, you know, please, look at my platform, but I'm gonna give you a thorough answer, because you deserve that, and that's what this forum is for. But in regards to that, I know everyone wants economic development. Um, but unfortunately, that's not within my power. But, I know how to collaborate with, the authorities, that have the power to do so. And I do have strong connections within many industries, many Fortune 500 companies. And, you know, these are people that, I can contact, for almost anything, and, start conversations. So, but I know that I can use those connections with the South Fulton Development Authority as well as, well, I think the Urban Redevelopment Authority, the Urban Development Authority or something. That may be no longer. I'll have to fact check that one. But with that, I would just have to work with, the authorities that we have. But in regards to my power, I would essentially, my entire campaign is about opportunity. And when I say opportunity is opportunity for housing, affordable housing. It's going to be opportunity for workforce development. It's going to be, opportunity for many different things that I know will serve the city of South Fulton well, things that the residents will see true value on. I do have, plans for guaranteed income plans, and it will not use city funds. And, it is it's a proven, it's a proven, um, test case. That's what I'll say. Well, guaranteed income, Miss Harvey, that's just more so where you receive a guaranteed amount a month, but you're going to provide services for that particular income. So my plan is to implement guaranteed income programs for the city of South Fulton, that is going to be, of course, need based, and allow people in the city of South Fulton you know to work, to do small gigs and, earn additional income that would be provided towards their housing. So it would, aid, affordable living as well as, you know, employment, efforts as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Harvey, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I want to go back to the private equity question that I think Mr. iPhone number 5 had mentioned. And let me just say this. There are 4 homes that are being built over in my area. One's finished. It's been sitting there for the last 3 months. They're building 2 others, about 3,000 square footage with garages, very nice homes. I guess they'll finish those within the next 2 or 3 months, and then they have another one. Very modern house, nice. They're gonna finish up with probably within the next few months. Now, one is just sitting, and I talked to the builders over there, and they told me all of these homes were built by investors to rent out. We're seeing a lot of this, and we're also seeing it in California after the fires in the Palisades and that other area. And the investors are coming in and buying up the lots because the wealthy people that had those homes, they don't want to rebuild because it's going to be too expensive. So private equity right now is here to stay because anyone that wants to buy a home these days, it's just too expensive and the maintenance is through the roof. So we're going to see more of that. So I'm just saying that, we could talk about it. We don't like it because it changes the neighborhood, the ambiance of the neighborhood, because you're only going to know someone for about a week, or 3 months, and then that family will go, and then somebody else is going to move in. So it's going to change the fabric. So that is here to stay. That's all I want to say about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a question about that topic right quick? Kelvin, what do you think about the idea? Because I don't know. This is just something that kind of popped in my head while I was listening to you guys talk about private investors. What do you think about the idea of the city having an additional tax for private investors, private property owners, for investors within our city limits? Is that legal? Well, I don't know if you know or not. Is that legal or is that not? Is that an option that we could look at? Because I know this probably is a state thing, but I'm just just running thoughts through my head on how we could tackle this problem.
Well, I think that, it absolutely has to be looked at legally. But I think there's opportunity legally, to at least ease, the burden of investor-owned properties. And I like the idea of, additional taxes on investor-owned properties, but I think that, we may have to, take it a bit further and,
Right.
establish criteria for the investor-owned properties. I don't think that we should initially just tax them more just because they're investors, because, we don't want to do things that, alienate investors. We want people to invest within our community, but we just want to make it fair and to where they're not just coming into our city just having their way. So with that, I'll say that, I think investor properties should fall within a different like tax code or tax provision or whatever,
Sure.
but the rate would be the same as all residents unless the investor doesn't do like 12-month leases. So that means that this investor is maybe doing short-term stays, is doing Airbnb. So if that's the type of investor, they would be taxed higher because you're going to be having families coming in, people coming in multiple times a week, multiple times a month. That's a significant burden on a subdivision or on a neighborhood. So I think that, the operations of the private investor matters. If they're investing in homes and they're doing 12-month leases, and more, I think we shouldn't punish them because it's essentially like, apartment. But if you're doing short stays where people can stay for 1 day, 3 days, I think you absolutely should be taxed differently.
I also think there should be a cap. If you own a certain number of properties within a area, I think that's where you should really start being penalized, discouraged from building. But thanks for your thoughts, man.
All right.
Rashad?
Yes. So Calvin, I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. When you're on social media, there seems to be a lot of commentary about just replace everybody. get rid of everybody. Make the case for get rid of everybody or don't get rid of everybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Make the case for both or choose one?
Whichever one you believe in.
Well, I can't, I'm not, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying get rid of everybody. I just feel comfortable in saying research the candidates and vote for the person that you feel is the right person to lead your district or your city. I think that, you know, we can make our city work with the voters' decision in November on November 4th.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Back to you, Calvin.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much Kelvin. I'll say this to you, man. You come across as honest. You know, well thought of. You got your stuff together. You know, I just wish you the best of luck, man. I wish you the best of luck. I don't think we can go wrong. You know, if you were to, pull this out. And I'll just say that, and I'm gonna piggyback what Candia said earlier. You know, it wasn't until I got on to one of these South Fulton meetings, and I decided I wasn't going to vote early, and I still haven't voted because some of you guys, some of you candidates that's running are very impressive, and I think our city is in good hands as long as we begin to see more candidates like you people getting into the race and getting involved in our city, man. So my hat's off to you for even putting your hat in the race, bro.
Thanks.
All right. We have two questions. We'll go to Ella Miller Map, then we'll go to Miss Kennedy. Miss Map, you should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Okay, I think I am muted. Um,
I hear you.
okay, good. Mr. Davis, I want to go back to what you said early on about senior services and housing authority. I feel very strongly about supporting seniors. And that one kind of piqued my interest, and glad to hear that you care. Would you be interested in setting up an aging services division that will keep all of that in one package, that would work to help you build a housing authority and a service that would encompass all things seniors, healthcare, supportive services, anything that will help them live life a little easier. And through those services that would be generated through various grants, other government opportunities and resources, whether it be through Fulton County or federal, state and federal.
Okay. So the question is exactly, I'm sorry.
Okay. You mentioned your interest in having a housing authority, and you also mentioned your interest in supporting seniors with senior services. So I'm suggesting your consideration for an aging services division in the City of South Fulton that would help seniors to have a place where they could access housing if that's what they need, directions for getting good health care, just direct them to every resource that's available, and the city can help access that resource through Fulton County, the state of Georgia, other grants, private resources, the federal grant opportunities. There's a lot of resources out there that the city can tap into.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do support, establishing, aging services division, for the city of South Fulton. I've actually already been in development of the operational model for serving seniors. And it's pretty close to being done. I'm actually working with another nonprofit on it. But it includes everything that you said, in terms of, helping seniors just get everything done within just one place.
Yes,
And, and it captures, you know, before residents become seniors, because, it's going to capture, when residents turn 50. So it's going to start, educating them on, public health things that they should be concerned about, as well as administrative things they should be preparing for, for senior citizenship. So just putting it on their radar, like, hey, these services are available within the city or within this nonprofit organization. And once, the time comes, for you to transition into seniorhood, these resources are here to streamline the whole experience.
very good. And I just want to add to that, that division could also help families learn what to expect. It's not something that you can read a book about,
Right.
because every experience is different. So there's so many ways that an aging services division can benefit the seniors and their families.
Agreed, 100%.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. And we are running low on time. We're going to get these last two questions from Danielle Kennedy and then Miss Teresa. So, Miss Kennedy, you should be able to unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Thank you so much again for taking the time and going over. These forums have been very, very instrumental in helping us as voters, because like I said, the 2-minute answer is not giving me what I need when there's 9, 10, 11 candidates running. So thank you again for doing this. My question is just if you could just reiterate your plan to unite all of the councils under a single vision, because I think my dilemma in even determining who I'm voting for council is maybe this person, I like this person because I do feel like they've been good for the district, but have they been good for the city? And how could you help to eliminate that dilemma for voters where, they may have, be prioritizing their district, but then the city, suffers, or their constituents may love them in their district, but then they get into a council meeting and just for lack of a better term, embarrass us in their representation. So how could you just kind of unify the council so we don't feel like we're running 7 different small cities?
Well, I think that in order to unify the council, the council really needs to have expanded responsibilities. And when I say that, I think each council member represents only one district is I would say it's a crutch. I think it's become a crutch within our city. I think that each council should represent a district, and each council should be an alternate for a district. So District 7 should, also maybe be an alternate for District 1, or, District 6 can be an alternate for District 2. That way, the council members can start to learn more about other districts and support, fellow council members in supporting their constituents. I think that, treating this city as 7 separate districts is sabotage, because we can't even, have the right police show up to an accident because the city lines are so complex. I think that, governing districts is the same way. I think that councils need expanded scopes. They need expanded responsibilities. I'm not going to say it's going to be their primary responsibility, but I think we can add some additional responsibilities, that they could support, their fellow council members on. And I know that would be helpful, and it would provide a lot of value to the residents of those districts, to have additional council support.
Good answer. I like that idea.
All right, thank you for that. And then our last question comes from Miss Teresa. Please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking the last question. I appreciate all of your answers. Your ideas are very good, but it goes back to this charter thing. And I like to understand, do you feel that the city of South Fulton should have a stronger mayor role, or why shouldn't it? Or should it not? I mean, what's your thoughts on really the charter and our, the position of the mayor? Because it's like, it's a new city and it seemed like we can't go forward because of all these different varied districts having their own push and pull. But my question is, why shouldn't the city of South Fulton have a stronger mayor charter position? Or why should it or shouldn't?
Okay, that's okay. I'm thankful for the second question, because I wouldn't be able to say why it shouldn't have a strong mayor charter, because I believe strong mayor charters work. But that's not a priority of my campaign. If the residents want a strong mayor charter, I fully support it. But I think they work. I think that a strong mayor charter gives the proper organization of a city, because we have to operate the city as Fortune 500 companies operate. And when you look at the way these corporations operate, they have a CEO, and they have board members, and the board members, they all have their powers and the CEO has his power, but it's a supportive effort where the CEO leads, the company into the future. And that's what it's all about. It's about leading this city into the future, because we've been too focused on the past 8 years, and that's only going to sabotage us if that's our focus today. So I'll say that, I support a strong mayor charter. If the residents want a strong mayor charter, I would support it. I think strong mayor charters work. And I think that it would really allow the city to operate as a business more so, as an organization.
Yes. Thank you for that. Do you have any understanding of why we're not, I mean, I know there's some rules that made us this way that we are today, but why? What would be the advantage? I don't understand why we have a weak mayor system, whoever put those things into place. I don't think it was the citizens that asked for it.
No, it wasn't. My research is usually pretty,
Delegation.
it's usually pretty strong. The city started as a strong mayor, but moved from, the strong mayor charter, after cityhood, but it wasn't put on the ballot. The voters didn't vote on it. From my understanding, the charter commission, made those changes. So from my understanding, we were initially a strong mayor city. And if I'm wrong, I would love for someone to correct me, because I don't, like saying things that are not accurate.
Because we weren't. We were always, city manager, and the council would write legislation. But I could tell you this, I am 100% for a strong mayor. I believe that across the city, the citizens vote for one person, with collectively, and that one person is who we have our faith in, and that person should be leading us. with the advice and consent, just like the Senate and the Congress, of our council. But that's just me. But I'm thinking you're going to hear more about this moving into the 2028 election. This probably going to be on the ballot to try to get the charter changed. I'm pretty sure you're going to hear that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why we have so much issue right now, because we voted for a mayor, but none of the colleagues supported the mayor.
Right.
So
And
we had
that's
issue after issue, backstabbing, all this kind of stuff going on. Anyways, that's my, thank you.
And Kelvin, the Charter Commission, I believe they first met in 2023, I think it was. So I don't think they made that change.
Okay.
Yeah.
so. Where are we, Rashad?
We could go into closing remarks. Kelvin, do you have any campaign events coming up or any appearances that you'll be making? Use this opportunity as your time to give your closing remarks.
I'll say that I don't have any campaign events coming up. I'm exhausted. I have to get ready for my daughter's birthday and my son's birthday. They're both Scorpios, so it's about to be a busy stretch. But I will invite everyone, to just reach out. You can literally text me. You can text the number on my website. You can call me. You can message me on Facebook, Instagram. If you want to have a conversation, if you want to know more about, my plans for the city of South Fulton, please just reach out. I don't have any more events. I'm probably not going to do any more events until election day. But I will open, myself up for any type of communication that you guys want to have. So.
And what about your closing remarks?
Also closing remarks. I want to say that, I thank everyone, for spending this evening with me and hearing what I have to say, because I know that, time is valuable and we all have, responsibilities. But when you go to the polls, I really want you to understand that the future really is on the ballot. This campaign isn't about ego. It's really mission oriented, and I'm here to serve the city of South Fulton. I'm here to serve the people. I can only hope, that, you check my name on that ballot, but, even if not, you're still going to see me do the work, for the city of South Fulton. And if I'm elected, you will be proud of the work, that I do for you. I can assure you. So thank you for being with me tonight.
All right, thank you. And as far as the South Fulton Coalition goes, we wanted to thank you, Mr. Bennett, as well as you, Mr. Davis. Now, you were supposed to actually be here Tuesday, but we had some schedule changes, so I appreciate you accommodating our request to move this to Thursday. We did receive a request to do one of these forums for the Public Service Commission. So we are working on that at this time. And on the 27th, we will be back, and that's with Senate District 35. We're going to start that race. And the first one is going to be with Jaha Howard, and that's going to be on the 27th. And we will publish the links and the flyer and all of that good stuff. So that's the first one that we'll be doing, but we will be doing all of the candidates for Senate District 35 who agree to participate. So that's all I have for everybody. This is actually the last of the mayor's race for the city of South Fulton. So please make sure you go and vote. Early voting ends October 31st, and election date is November the 4th. So everyone, I just want to thank everyone that bared with us, and we actually had to do 25 of these at 2 hours apiece. So I just want to thank the community, thank all of the moderators, thank all of the candidates, because I know it's been a stretch. So again, everybody, thank you.